Order. Tonight, we'll be following the published and posted agenda. Will be available via Zoom. Also be recorded for future viewing and live broadcast on Chelmsford Telemedia and on YouTube. First on our agenda this evening is approval of minutes from February 13th, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes of February 13th, 2025 of the Finance Committee.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving right along, we have a review of the fiscal year 26 budget for the library. And with us this evening, we have the library director, Leslie Kimball.
Everybody?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, I can't believe a year's gone by, but here we are. Thank you so much for the time. I'm excited to be here to talk about what's happening at the library and what we're looking forward to in the next fiscal year. So we'll start with the budget, since that's what we're here to talk about. Just for context, the library budget is about 2% of the town's budget. This year, the library budget is at a 3.8% increase. And no surprise, the main drivers are utilities, inflation, and state aid eligibility. So when I talk about state aid eligibility, there's a few requirements that are unique to the library's budget. In order for us to be eligible for state aid, which at the moment is about $90,000 for the year, so it's quite significant. So for us to be eligible for that, we need to maintain a 2.5% increase over the average of the last 3 years' municipal appropriation for the library. That's fun math. And then we need to spend 13% of our operating budget on materials. So all the things that people borrow that go directly to the public. And then we need to meet a standard of open hours, and that's based on population. And for us, that is 59 hours a week is that standard. This year, a known unknown for us is the union contract. Like the other union contracts in town, it's being negotiated right now, so we won't know on the personnel side exactly what that increase is going to be. In addition to the budget that we receive from the town, we're really, really fortunate to have support from the Chelmsford Friends of the Library. We mention them every year. We truly couldn't do everything that we do without them. In fiscal year 25 to date, they've given us over $80,000. So that's about 2/3 of the programs that we're able to offer. They were able to replace all the chairs in our meeting room, which get very, very heavy use. They've added museum passes so that even more families are able to go and take advantage of that. So we're really fortunate. We feel like it allows us to do a lot with the money we get from the town by enhancing that with money from the Friends. Next slide, Jim. So this library budget this year and the town manager's recommended budget does take Sunday hours out of our budget. So we're open traditionally the Sunday after Indigenous Peoples Day through the Sunday before Memorial Day. So a little more than half the year, or about 8 months. This is a real hardship for the community. We understand the needs of the town right now, so we're certainly completely understanding of that. But, just again, to understand that, because Sundays are a surprise sometimes to people, how busy they are. It's tied with Friday for our second busiest day of the week. Saturday's our busiest day. On Saturdays, we see about 75 people an hour come through our doors, and on Sundays and Fridays, it's 65 people per hour are coming through our doors on that day. We average about 250 people coming, and then that first hour that we're open on Sundays is actually tied with Friday mornings for the actual busiest hour of our week. So Sundays are really important. We do a lot of programs on that day. We have a lot of families visiting on that day. And we're one of the only 2 libraries in the region who are open on Sundays. So it's something we certainly take very seriously, and we'll be looking closely at how we can continue to serve the community on this incredibly important day. Okay. So just some of the ways that the library makes such a big impact in the community. We have 175,000 visits every single year to our libraries. And, you know, what that represents is the library is a safe and welcoming space. It's used for warming and cooling when our weather gets away from us and people may not have access to that. And that's going to work even better as the HVAC project moves forward and we're able to keep that stable. It's an accessible building. It's not only accessible from the physical sense. We've added a program called Good Maps, which does voice navigation of the building itself for folks who are visually impaired. And our resources and programs recognize and represent the diversity that we have in our community. So it's a place where anyone can come and feel welcome. And it's open more hours than any other public service building in town with those 59 hours a week. Right now, we're also open the additional 4 hours on Sundays. So it's a really important place in addition to service. So another impact is has to do with the amount of technology that we offer. I think it's really easy to forget that not everybody has the digital world right at their fingertips. We see it every single day. We know, partially from the town's strategic planning process and hearing from the community, how serious the digital divide is, how lost and isolated people can feel from town government information or from other social things that are happening in town if they're not able to have technology access. So the fact that one of the things that strikes me about this is it's really easy for me to pull out my phone or my laptop. I'm very fortunate and privileged that I'm able to do that. If I'm making the trip to the library, it's because I really need to. It's because my technology at home isn't working, or it's because I don't know how to access that particular government website or something else that I need to do online. It's because my other technology isn't working, my printer isn't working. So I'm making the trip to the library because I have a real need. And we're talking about 16,000 hours of computer use at the library. And then in addition to that, there's the technology classes that we offer, the one-on-one help. So it's an essential service. And we're not just in one place in the community. We're not even just in two places. But our McKay branch in North Chelmsford, if you've never been there, please go and visit. It's wonderful. The town has really invested in it over the past few years, completely upgrading the ventilation system to make it safe and a pleasant place to visit. We've got unique services and events there. Many of you probably know about the summer concerts at McKay, which are continuing, but we've also had teen paint and sips. I promise the sips are appropriate. We've had homeschool hangouts there. We have a seed library and a spice club at McKay, and we've got some great things planned for this summer as well. You know, it's another place in town where we're able to bring people together. In this case, in North Chelmsford. It's a place that people can call a second home. It was the family home of the first librarian in Chelmsford, Anna McKay. And her family gave the house to the town for use as a library, and it's been in good use ever since. It's really a wonderful spot to visit. And our visits, we reopened that in May of, this is 23? That sounds crazy. But the visits are up just over last year, 35%. So we're really seeing that grow. It's something else that's coming soon there is we're going to be able to add some kind of low-tech 24/7 book lockers. McKay has limited hours, but this will allow people to pick things up even when the library isn't open. And another place we are around town is with the pop-up library truck that we've had a great seasons with that. This year, we're adding some new stops, which we're really excited about, in some different places in town, really trying to identify spots where people might have trouble getting to the library or otherwise need library service outside of our buildings. So it's been really exciting. I've felt really lucky to be able to see some of the process of the town's strategic plan coming together, and seeing the values and the priorities that the community have been talking about and bringing forward at the forums. I think that it's exciting to us, the values like community engagement and education, sustainability and inclusivity. These are all things that mean so much in the library as well. We're proud to be a part of the town's mission and vision for that. And I think that's part of our impact. So I certainly invite every single one of you to enjoy everything that the library has to offer. We have a couple of big special events that are coming up. The volunteer fair is coming up on March 22nd. That's, of course, a wonderful community event, matching up people who are interested in helping with groups that do a lot of good. And there's going to be a little special presentation at 2 o'clock to recognize some volunteers from the town and from the library. And we're really fortunate Neshoba Tech students are preparing and providing some wonderful refreshments. So we hope that you'll be able to join us at the Senior Center for that on March 22nd. And One Book Chelmsford, of course, and actually, you guys want to give out books. One Book Chelmsford, the annual book extravaganza. We have really excited. The author this year won the Pulitzer Prize in 2024 for this book, biography, called Master, Slave, Husband, Wife. It's an amazing...
Do not need one. Have read it.
All right, Elaine can fill you in, but no spoilers, right, Elaine?
Hi, thank you. Good, how are you?
Thank
Oh,
you.
nice to see you.
Thank you.
How's school? Oh my gosh, congratulations.
So it's a great true story. It reads almost like a thriller, honestly.
Why isn't Oprah optioned it and filmed it?
You're just going to have to ask her.
Next time we're having lunch, yes.
You let us know. If she wants to come to the event, you just
Okay.
let her know when it's happening.
Okay.
But we certainly would love to see you there. This is an amazing opportunity to have this Pulitzer Prize winning author come and speak to us. And please, after you read the book, share it. There's also lots of electronic copies through Libby that you can download or listen to. We're about half full with the registrations on the One Book Chelmsford, so I encourage you to get online and register so you can save yourself a spot. And I am very happy to answer any questions about the budget.
I have a question. You said Sunday was your second busiest day, tied with Friday.
Yep.
Why, have you thought about like closing on a slower day during the week, like a Monday? I don't know how busy Mondays are, but.
Yeah, none of the days are slow. I think it's a great question. Sundays have the least impact on staff and on the union contract because right now those are their overtime hours that staff are electing to work. So it's and we're not open a full year on Sundays also. Mm-hmm. So it's doesn't impact an entire year. It just impacts part of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope I understood this correctly. I think I understood you to say that you, to maintain your certification, you had to have a minimum number of hours of 59 per week.
Yes.
Now, is that additive of the two facilities, or is that inclusive?
It is, we don't get to count McKay separately.
All right, thank you.
I asked that question early on myself.
Oh, good, now I don't feel so stupid. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one.
Yeah.
If Sundays, if I understand it, you just have overtime as the way of staffing it. So if you were to remain open all year, would the cost be more than just overtime? I mean, how expensive would it be to leave it open all year long on Sundays?
That's a good question. So it's, we would have budgeted this year about $43,000 for the, is it 8 months? Somebody needs to do that math for me. So, it would be 20, so it would be 70,000 to have it open all year long, kind of at the current hours.
So the savings is how much?
The savings is about 43,000.
Okay. Thank you.
You also have a challenge getting staff who want to work in summer. To be honest, people might not be as wanting to work in July and August and summer months on Sundays.
At the library?
It is air conditioning.
It is air conditioning, it's getting work done, yeah.
It is air conditioned.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's a point. I think Sundays have been designed traditionally to try to maximize service to the community at the times when the community perhaps would use it the most as well, because to that same point, it might not see the same kind of usage in July.
Okay. All right. Les, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. If you have any other questions, you know where to find me.
All right, moving right along this evening, we have a review of the fiscal year 26 budget for the Neshoba Valley Technical School District. And with us this evening is Superintendent Denise Pigeon.
Thank you.
I think I memorized this by now, don't you?
Yeah, I think we.
Good evening, everyone. I am Denise Pigeon, the superintendent at Neshoba Valley Tech. Thanks for the invite. I always enjoy coming to see you and sharing about Neshoba Tech, what's happening in our budget. I did send over a PowerPoint.
Good.
But you have a copy of it as well, so I can just go through the handouts when everybody has a copy. Oh, good, great. So on the first slide, I always like to start our presentation by just reminding everyone we are your public vocational technical high school. Chelmsford is one of our 8 sending towns and continues to be our largest sending town. On the second slide is a high-level overview of the vocational technical programs that we offer. So about 50% of our students are enrolled in construction and transportation technical programs, things like carpentry, plumbing, electrical, automotive, auto tech. About 30% of our students are enrolled in health and services programs, everything from health and dental assisting to vet assisting, culinary. And about 22% of our students are in arts and technology programs like programming and web, engineering, advanced manufacturing. So Chelmsford's enrollment has, over time been increasing. But I will say, and I say this every year, we're still going for that goal of the highest enrollment ever at Neshoba Tech from students from Chelmsford, and that's back in 1976. You had 313 students attending Neshoba Valley Tech. So from last year to this year, there was a slight decrease in enrollment, but you can see we've had a pretty steady enrollment for the past few years. Enrollment is really important when we're talking about the assessment because enrollment is one of the largest drivers of the assessment. So there's sort of 2 pieces to that equation, and that is whether or not your enrollment is increasing or decreasing, and also the portion of your overall enrollment in relation to all of the other towns. So from last year to this year, there is a slight decrease in enrollment, and you will see that when we get to the assessment page. So Chelmsford is down in enrollment by 8 students, but our overall enrollment is up by 7 students. And Chelmsford makes up 27.49% of the total student population at NT. This next slide, I think you could take it out of my presentation and copy and paste it into every single school district's, budget presentation, and probably quite a bit of it in a town presentation as well. We are all facing the same exact budget pressures and drivers. For us, our building is aging, but we work really hard to keep up with preventative maintenance and care of our building. We use our students whenever possible. We're all experiencing uncertainty in terms of state and federal funding variations. We've also been pretty vocal that over the last few years, we're really trying to be cognizant of how we utilize one-time funds for annual expenses so that we don't find ourselves in a position futuristically of having a major budget shortfall. So we're paying close attention to that. Again, every school has seen increased needs. I like to say that it's getting better since the pandemic, but we are still in a recovery phase. Health insurance has been a big increase everywhere. I think it's been a pressure. We're doing better in health insurance than some areas that I've heard recently. So we're fortunate about that, but it is still a budget pressure. Contractual increases for staffing. And what's unique, one of the things that's unique to Neshoba Tech is really the supply and equipment component. When you're thinking about educational supplies, we're not just talking about like the paper and pencils and printing. We're talking about raw materials for carpentry and plumbing and electrical. And anytime you see an increase in those types of costs, we're going to see an increase in the cost of our educational supplies as well because of the type of education that we do. Next slide. In terms of capital projects, we do maintain a 5 to 10 year capital plan. And this picture, I have to, it's a bit of a joke to put that picture up. I mean, nobody likes to show off a hallway that looks like that. But this was the day, like 2 days before school started. We worked really hard to get our fire suppression system project done that I shared with you last year. We had to do a complete reno of the second phase of the project. And we pulled it off. So it was finished and that hall was beautiful and sparkling before the students walked through. But we did cut it close. So the fire suppression project, we knew that we couldn't financially maintain getting it all done at the same time. So we've broken it out into 5 to 6 phases. And we finished phase 2 over the summer. The only capital project that we actually have in the FY26 budget proposal is the next phase of fire suppression. We actually chose to hold off on all other projects for the time being because of the overall budget constraints. So we are budgeting for zone 6 and 8, which is our science wing, and you'll see that in the budget request. We have been very fortunate. I know I've been saying this for the last few years. I hope I can continue to talk about grants. I hope they continue to come. But this has really saved our capital planning at Neshoba Tech. So as you know, we opened a new 7,000 square foot building that now is housing our engineering, programming, and web programs. And by doing that, we were also now able to move a few other programs around and expand the size of our electrical program. We just accepted 36 new freshmen into our electrical program. It's the largest freshman class in electrical that I've ever seen in all the years I've been there. So we're doing very strategic moves to be able to increase the number of seats in the high demand programs. Another grant, Vet Tech, and Vet Tech is also in expansion. We're moving cosmetology. So in the next slide, we can show you some photos of cosmetology. This project has taken us quite a long time to finish. We had some student help, we had some grant help, and the salon. We just received our certificate of occupancy for the new salon this week, and now we have 2 more visits. We have the Department of Ed coming in and the Board of Cosmo, and I think our students are going to be in there in maybe less than 2 weeks. And then it will open to the public, so please come by. So futuristically, we were hoping to replace 3 student passenger vans in the FY26 budget. We put that on hold as well. We're going to use our automotive programs to keep that fleet going, but that's a pressure we're going to have to face in coming years. And then really big picture projects that we need to work on. We do need to do a full HVAC replacement at our school. We have been chipping away at it. Every time we get one of these grants, we replace that HVAC unit in that particular program. But we have a big building and we have a lot of programs. So we're actually in the process of writing for an MSBA accelerated repair project. And we're looking to hopefully move forward with heat pumps and also maybe replace some of the doors. Some of them are original. We're putting that in. And the reason for the timing, not just need, but also we have a large piece of debt that's going to be coming off the books. The large project from 2003 to 2005 will be getting paid off very soon. So we're trying to time if we take on more debt with the debt coming off and the debt going on. Next slide, please. So that's just a rendering of the building. If you drive by the school, it's sort of seamless. You can't even see where it is. It blends in real nice. You can keep going. Thank you for many of you who came to the ribbon cutting for our new building. That was in August, just a couple days before school started. I do always like to share with the Finance Committee where we stand on a couple of our accounts. Our stabilization account is in good shape. It's at about 1.4 million, which is within our policy of 8 to 10% of our total budget. We are not proposing funding this any further. And OPEB, you can see our current balance in OPEB. We would hope to make a larger payment to OPEB, but again, due to budget constraints, we are going to stick with 100,000 for this year. Next slide, please. Again, I like to share this with the finance department, just in general. Neshoba Tech does offer high-quality vocational technical education at a cost that is at a very cost-effective way. And when you compare us to our other vocational schools, we are on the lower end of cost per pupil. So this is the high-level view of the budget. You could see that the majority of our funding is spent in instruction, and that's primarily staffing costs and instructional costs. You can go to the next slide.
Maybe.
And our estimated revenue plan. So on the left side of this slide, it shows sort of two portions of the funding and how our school is funded. So at the top, these are funds that come not direct through the town assessments. So we do receive direct Chapter 70 aid. We are anticipating about a $100,000 increase in direct Chapter 70 aid. We wish it was more. I think that's a story you're hearing across the state as well. Regional transportation reimbursement, we have an estimate in there. We were hopeful, and now we're just going to have to wait and see. And we are proposing to put in about $600,000 from our excess and deficiency. That is not the full amount of E&D. It's less a couple $100,000, and that's been the methodology that we've used the last few years, again, in that attempt to start trying to wean off the use of one-time funds. If we find ourselves in a year where we have a very low E&D and we're used to offsetting, it would be problematic in the future. On the bottom, this is the funding that comes direct from the towns, and that's the town assessment revenue, which we'll get into a bit more on the next slide. And in orange, you can see that about 68% of our total budget is made up from town assessments. So this is the overview of all of the towns, the total enrollment, the percentage. And then the next column, town's minimum contribution, that is not a number that Neshoba Tech sets. That is a number we wait for after the governor's budget is released, and it is based on a very complicated state formula. And the rest of the columns do actually calculate on your percentage of enrollment at Neshoba Tech. The next slide shows you a comparison of our total assessment. This is not just Chelmsford, this is all towns. Total assessment year over year. So you can see we're up 7 students. Our minimum contribution is the most significant increase, and again, this is calculated by the state formula. So we have had a significant increase in the required minimum contribution. Capital and transportation is pretty much level. Our transportation costs in general are increasing, but we were able to adjust some of our special transportation needs, and that's why you see a reduction there. But our transportation contract is increasing. As is everybody's. A little increase in the additional assessment, and debt service slightly going down. This next slide tells the story of Chelmsford's assessment year over year. So you can see down 8 students, down a little bit in your percentage of the town, of all of the towns. Your required minimum contribution went up about $25,000. Capital and transportation assessment is slightly down, additional assessment slightly up, and debt slightly down, for a total change in your assessment by $16,559. And then I always like to give a plug for the special things that are going on. We are continuing to run cohort after cohort of career and technical initiative programs. These are adult retraining programs that are completely free to the participant. They are fully state funded through a state grant. We're running the electrical cohorts have been filling every single time. If you know anyone out there that's looking to change careers, the field is desperately in need, and we are running cohorts in these areas, so please spread the word. And I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have. Please come visit us.
You're having the HVAC done. I know the students are unlikely to be involved because it's a fairly big project. Will they be allowed to watch?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
So I would think that our entire construction program would participate in watching. When we were putting in the new building, the students were very excited. They were watching every step of the project every day. They would go down and we would set up a viewing area for them to watch the trucks coming in and doing all the work. So yes, we would do the same thing. And I'm glad you brought HVAC up because HVAC is not a technical program that we have, but I'm very hopeful that futuristically that would be probably the next one we would consider adding. And that's what we have our eyes on in terms of state grants to potentially help us to get an HVAC program off the ground. We really think it would fill fast.
And you could also,
And then they could help us take care of the HVAC too. We would like
Yeah,
that.
I think everyone would like that, yeah.
would you be able to then also do it as an adult program? Because that,
Yes, absolutely. I think it would fall right into CTI potentially.
okay.
Quick question on OPEB. So contributing 100,000, liabilities 9.7 million. What was it last year? So is the
For our
balance-
liability,
Yeah, what is the balance growing significantly or slowly?
I don't think it's changed all that much. I don't have the number in front of me. I'm looking at Paul because he's on our OPEB trust. I'd have to check that balance and get back to you, but our liability hasn't shifted too significantly. But I can send you that information so you can see the history. And in terms of how we've gone about funding it, so here's some good news. We are in a really good place. If you compare Neshoba Tech to other regional schools in terms of how far along they are in funding OPEB, we are absolutely in a wonderful place, and I can't take any credit for that. It was set up before I was superintendent. Paul's been on our trust for a long time. But what we have done is we've made a commitment to always fund it at least some. In some years we were funding it as much as 200,000. The last couple of years it's been at 100,000. But I'll send you all the history on OPEB because
Thank
it's
you.
definitely something we're keeping an eye on.
Any other questions?
I can give you a footnote. When she cited the enrollment of 313 back in 1976,
Mm-hmm.
there were 2,859 students at Chelmsford High School because there were 700
It was a double session. Yeah.
At that point, Neshoba Tech ratio was 10.95%. Today, their ratio is over 12.5% because they have over 200 Chelmsford students, and the Chelmsford High School enrollment is now only about 1,600.
I'm going to need to add that to
Oh,
my
that's an
slideshow.
important
So they're
data
getting
point.
to the point that they have
That's important,
5%
yeah.
of students
From Chelmsford than they did.
today than they did
Yeah.
back in the heyday.
Well, that's because they had the new high school coming online at that time. I may know some people that may have been in those classes.
Thank you. This is more information. I love the history. Thank you.
All right.
And I'll ask you a question that the town manager asked you at our last session. Where are you in terms of net school spending requirement?
Well, last year Neshoba Tech met net school spending by $1.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Okay.
For people at home, what does that mean?
It means that we are in a place where you're funding us sort of right at that line of where we need to be funded. But if we are spending any less, we're going to be in a situation.
We can't cut it by 50 cents, Elaine.
Yeah, no.
That's what that
No,
means.
What I'm trying to say is, I know what
Yes.
net school spending is because I hear it at home.
Yep.
But before he was on this committee, I didn't. And I would think that would be, what? You know, so it's the minimum you have to spend.
Right.
So you came really close.
We did.
You frugal girl.
Well, and I think the grants have played a role in that as well. We did receive a significant amount of grant funds. So that's, that has helped offset budget expenses and capital expenses. I hope I can keep that going, but I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pretty close, huh?
That is razor thin.
That's the best.
I think we'd ever come into.
Moving right along, we have a review of the fiscal year 26 budget for the Finance Department, which includes accounting, assessors, information technology, treasury, and collection. And with us this evening, we have John Souza, our Finance Director and Treasurer.
John brings gifts too. He can have one for last night, so
I already paid mine. I'm good. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee. Tonight I'd like to present the Finance Department budget request for the 4 offices that make up the Finance Department. And I wanted to mention that, so I had an opportunity back at the end of February to meet virtually with Cindy and Anita, our Finance Department liaisons, to review the budget in detail. And just to go through the handout with you tonight, if you, the first page just describes the main functions of each office, so I won't spend a lot of time there. You can read through those. And then the next page has some goals for the upcoming fiscal year for each office. And then we come to the next page. It has a summary of the staffing table for FY26 and the preceding years. And the only thing I would call your attention to, it's essentially the same. If you look in the FY26 column in the accounting office, you'll see that the part-time clerk is not funded for FY26, and that was one of the budget staff reductions that was necessary to balance the budget, the town budget this year. So it's a slight reduction. We're going from 14.25 FTEs to 14. And then starting with we go to the next page, we'll just start with the line item budget just to explain that to everyone. So the first office we come to is the Treasurer Collector's Office. And you can see that under Personnel Services, the salary line, personnel salaries in that area, it's increasing just under $20,000. There's a small increase in longevity. That covers normal increases under the town's non-union compensation plan for all employees. And then under expenses, the expense budget's virtually unchanged except for under contract services, you'll see an increase of $2,000. That's for a service contract for our Munis software. And so in total, the Treasurer Collector's Office budget increases about $21,700 for the upcoming fiscal year. Moving on to the next office is Information Technology, and that's staffed by 2 individuals, the IT director and the network manager. And you'll see under the personnel services area, that budget's increasing just about $7,200 for the upcoming year, just under 3%. And if we look at the expense budget for that office, most of it is a lot of service contracts, some computer maintenance items, software, hardware. Just a couple changes. The commuter maintenance line decreases $2,000, contracted services increases $3,000, a net increase of $1,000. Basically, the expense budget is pretty much level. It's going up only about 1/3% for the upcoming year. And then we then move on to the assessor's office. And so here, I just wanted to take a moment. We have the current fiscal year was a year of great transition in the office, and I'll describe that for everyone that may not be familiar with it. So in the beginning of the fiscal year, we welcomed a new assistant assessor to the office, Brian Corcoran. And then I also saw the departure of our longtime assessor, Frank Green, in July after many years of service. And then in September, we saw the retirement of Sue Taylor, our longtime administrative assistant to the assessor. And at that time, Michelle O'Hagan, the assessing clerk, was then promoted to the position that was vacated by Sue. And then we welcomed a new assessing clerk, Monica Walsh. So want to say that we're pleased to have all those new staff members with us. They've been it's been great for Reagan Flood, our chief assessor, she's done a very good job of putting together a new team and having just about, I would say, 75% of your office goes through a transition. That's not easy to deal with. So that's kind of a backdrop to where I'm going with the line item budget. If you look at the personnel services area, personnel decreases by about costs decreased by about $37,000. The reason for that is full-time salaries decrease about $27,000, and then you see the longevity line going away. That's because when you have newer staff, you an employee needs to work for 10 years of uninterrupted service to be eligible for longevity, so that's the reason for that. And you also have, typically, in town government, you usually have salary savings when you have longer-term employees retire and then you have newer employees start. The newer ones usually tend to start at the beginning of the salary grade. So that's the reason for the savings there. And also, I should mention, in the current fiscal year, we would have had payouts of accrued time for any staff that had been with us for a long time upon their retirement. Then we look down in the second half of the budget, under expenses. A couple of things I would just point out. The revaluation line is decreasing 70,000. And the reason for that is because we had to perform a complete revaluation of all real and personal property during fiscal year '25. So the budget increased for that work during this year, but it will decrease in the coming year. And then if you look down under contracted services, that line item increases 29,000. The reason for that, we're trying to make that line item a little more realistic with prior year actuals, if you look at it. And then under dues and subscriptions, there's a decrease of 4,500. So if we look at the total, and so in total, the expenses decrease about 45,000. If we look at the whole assessor's office budget, it decreases about 82,000 because of the things that I just described. So that kind of gives you an overview of all the different offices. And then the last page is just gives you salary detail for each of the positions in the department. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Any questions? All right.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, moving right along. This is where we have a little departure from the normal review of fiscal year '26 budget. Cemetery Commission and David Gosselin will be giving that update this
Yeah.
evening.
Which will be relatively quick, I hope. You've got the slide up there. If you look at the personnel, there's only 4 people, that we have, maybe 4 and some clerical part-time help, okay? And that's pretty much been the case all along. There's not much change there. If you then just go to the salary line, you'll see that fundamentally, the only salary changes are what's by, agreement, okay, step increases there. And if you go down to the expenses, Dave's got very little going up, just a couple, he moved some numbers around, but if you look at the overall thing, he's only going up a couple of grand, and when you think of everything becoming more expensive, it's hard not to think he's doing a pretty good job there. If you wonder, the biggest line item, I guess, on one of them is the outlay, and the outlay is the fence. They do work every year on keeping the fences in good shape, and that requires a lot of work. He's got a great deal there, by the way. He's got a service, I won't go into it, other than it's probably better than market that you could get, and it seems to be working out pretty well. But the thing is, it's very well run. The cemeteries are kept very well. And I'll answer any question you have, but he's a joy to go talk to. And I couldn't see having him come here for his budget, but he would have if we asked him to. Any questions?
David, did David mention anything about the increase in the out-of-state travel? Just what that was?
Yeah, there is the people who run the cemeteries do have a get-together every so often, okay? And he actually has been the chairman, has actually had to put it together on a couple of occasions.
Okay.
So,
This is a cemetery commission meeting out of state. Got it.
yeah, but that's what that is.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right. Continuing on the pattern, we have a presentation of the fiscal year 26 budget for the Veterans Agent, and Sam Chase will be giving that as the liaison for that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the Cemetery Commission, this is a fairly simple and straightforward budget without any real remarkable variances from prior years, with the exception that this budget for fiscal '26 contemplates the reduction of the half-time or part-time person that had been associated with that office. So you don't see that position funded for fiscal '26. Other than that, the expenses are pretty much in line with prior year. There are no remarkable changes. The one thing I would like to point out, and which is not shown on this particular document, the claims that are filed by the veterans agents on behalf of the eligible veterans in Chelmsford are reimbursed by the state at a maximum rate of 75%. So when you are looking at the bottom line budget, and we don't do this in our presentation, and that's not a fault. I understand the accounting behind it, but I think in just taking a look at this particular budget with regard to the actual outlay and any money that we get back via reimbursement, you have to actually net out the total budget at the bottom by the amounts that are reimbursed. Again, those are not shown on this sheet, and you can get those from the revenue page of the town manager's budget. But just to give you a couple of examples, for fiscal '24, the state reimbursement was approximately $121,000. So you would have to net that from the $242,485, and you would get a total net cost of $121,149. And for fiscal '25, you do the same thing. You net out the numbers, and that comes up to a $197 or almost $198. And projected for fiscal '26, you would get a net of about $143,000. So those reimbursements can fluctuate year over year from a low of about 60% to a high of about 80%, because it's cyclical, and generally they track anywhere from 12 to 18 months behind the time that you file a claim. So the claims that we file in one year, you will not get within the next year a direct one-to-one reimbursement. Okay, so that's how that works. As I said at the beginning, the office has been staffed, I believe, since 2023, with one full-time veterans agent and a part-time assistant. And again, for the upcoming fiscal year, the budget anticipates or has accounted for the fact that that part-time position has been reduced. So that is the, as I said, there are no remarkable changes or variances from prior years. Any questions?
Actually, I have one.
Oh.
What kind of services do they apply for?
Well, there are various claims, statutory claims that they can put in for. I can't give you I probably should have brought a list. I did not, and I apologize, and I can look that up for you later. But veterans generally are eligible for many different types of veterans, service-connected things, disabilities and so forth. Most of these would be some form of disability. That would be the preponderance of the claims that are filed.
It's just the agent is filling out helping
That's
them
correct.
navigate the
That's correct.
complicated forms.
That's correct. And there are, depending on the service, depending on your veteran service, you're eligible for different types of monies from the federal government. And for example, if you're a Vietnam veteran, okay, you might be eligible for Agent Orange type benefit. And the veteran will walk into the office and, they have no idea what to do. They don't know. How do I go about claiming these benefits? And so the veterans agent will spend time with that veteran, walk them through the process, help them navigate the claims process. So it can be very complicated, and it can take a long time to get a positive adjudication on these claims. So it's fairly involved. It's a fairly involved process, and it's there's a degree of specialization there. So.
Thank you.
Do any of these cuts that are coming at the glorious federal level go to blow back on our veterans here in Chelmsford?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I would think at least response time might, if they're laying off all these people.
Well, right now, that's an area we can't delve into. We can't see what the potential is there, so.
Sam?
Yes.
The budget I'm seeing here that you was sent over earlier this week, I think it's actually the 2025 numbers without the 2026 numbers here.
Did I grab the wrong sheet?
Yeah.
I apologize.
If you could just circulate that after tonight,
I will do that.
that would be great. Thank you. I was looking at it going, wait a second.
Looking at it too, thank you. I thought I was going. I was tired.
I guess I need a refresher course on my computer skills.
At the library.
Library's
The
the place to go.
That's right. Yeah. So, grab the wrong file.
Okay. So what I'm not going to do is throw up the PEG access file, but what we have next is a review of the fiscal year 26 budget for the public education and government access television, and Sam is updating us on that one as well.
Okay, and again, as with the veterans budget, there really is nothing remarkable there for the proposed fiscal 26 versus the fiscal 25. If you go back to fiscal 24, there was a significant bump in the outlay expense, and that $213,000, that related to the refurbishment of the telemedia studio. They did quite an extensive renovation, added equipment and so forth. So those numbers are down, okay? And you can actually see that the overall budget has increased year over year, or the projected budget for fiscal 26. So there's really nothing remarkable there. The studio is staffed with 4 full-time people, and they're all senior people, so that they're at the top of the scale. And then you've got a younger person who came in a couple of years ago. So there's 5 full-time, 4 senior person, 1 junior person. And they are looking at a retirement next year. And I'm told by the director that they will make every attempt to consolidate and do what they can as far as that's concerned. So that's something we look forward to in the coming years. But as I said, there really is nothing remarkable, and you can see some decreases in some of the areas, and the overall projection for this year is about 1% below what the budget was last year.
Okay.
So, one other thing, and I always have to put this pitch in, the revenue looks okay for the time being, but we have to remember that these operations are funded by a surcharge on your cable bill. And as more people cut the cord, the revenue stream dries up. So they are somewhat concerned about that, but they seem hopeful for, the short-term, near future anyway. So, but we have to keep that in mind going forward.
Okay. Any questions?
Sam, is there any thought about how to fund it in the future? I mean, more and more people are honestly, we're going to cut the cord or find other more creative ways.
I asked that question, and the answer was, we don't know.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I mean, I don't know, I've thought of that as well. It's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Moving right along, we have a review of the general and zoning bylaw amendments for warrant articles 29 and 30 for outdoor lighting. With us this evening is a citizen petitioner, Kelly Beatty.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Beatty. I live at 117 Park Road. I've been in town for 40 years. I have authored, along with the planning board, a general bylaw to come up at town meeting that will replace an existing zoning bylaw having to do with outdoor lighting. That, as you can, just a few highlights here. That bylaw was voted on unanimously at the 2000 fall town meeting, and it is basic. It is essentially, if you have a light that's above a certain brightness, you have to point it down. It makes some exemptions for public safety, emergency lighting, and so forth. In that time, in the last 25 years, we've undergone a tremendous revolution in the way we light the night. You've probably heard of LEDs. They're everywhere now, and they have changed the landscape. There are two things that lighting science has come to realize involving LEDs and more generally. First of all, LEDs emit a lot of blue light. That is, in their color, their spectrum, there's a lot of blue light that's emitted that hadn't been evident in previous generations. You probably remember the peachy colored lights, which are called high pressure sodium, which are pretty pervasive. They've almost all been eliminated now. And the LEDs that have replaced them emit a lot of blue light. Blue light at night is sort of public enemy number one for many reasons. It creates the most sky glow. It is the most disruptive to nocturnal environments and ecosystems. It is what disrupts your circadian sleep pattern. It leads to certain human health problems. And so that's one thing. And the second thing that has come about is that a realization. You've probably all seen maps of Earth at night taken from space, and you see all these lights showing up the cities. You would think that would be the worst possible light pollution, but it's not. It's actually light that goes out almost just above horizontal, creating a lot of glare. And as our population gets older, we've come to realize that glare is a big problem in terms of being able to see well at night. For the same reasons that you have lampshades on your lamps at home, we should have lampshades on what's outdoor at night because we want to see the target area and not necessarily the bulb. So, with all that as kind of a backdrop, and also the zoning bylaw applied to residential and commercial properties, but not to municipal, not to utilities. And so that's why I approached the planning board to adopt a general bylaw, which would allow those to fall under the umbrella of making those lighting conforming. And also a general bylaw allows for the essentially establishment that all non-conforming lighting is non-conforming. There's no grandfathering involved. Any light that's bad, and trust me, in the 25 years since the first bylaw was enacted, despite the existence of that bylaw, the town has had a lot of really bad light installed. And so by having a general bylaw that will allow us to make all not conforming lighting non-conforming, and what we've done is build in a 10-year sort of grace period, or what's called a sunset clause, to bring that lighting in conformance. It's not like people are going to be asked to change it immediately. Interestingly, early adopters of LED lighting, roughly a decade ago, for example, the town's streetlights, I think, were installed in 2012. I've had conversations with Christine Clancy about this. We can anticipate that for a lot of the installations of LEDs that exist that are non-conforming now, within the next 10 years, those will need to be replaced. And so that would be a logical time to replace those and make them conforming. So as I said, the planning board has worked with me on this. We can go to the next one, next frame, please. Let's compare. I'd like to compare what exists in the existing bylaw and what we're proposing these are standards for all lighting. The thresholds for shielding remain the same. One of the things that is new is the introduction of specifications for what defines a nuisance. If you talk to the building commissioner or Paul, when there have been issues related to the enforcement of this, it always boils down to somebody's light is annoying to somebody else. It might be a business to a homeowner or homeowner to homeowner, and that nuisance is what sort of triggers a response. It's always been a complaint-driven bylaw. We've actually, in the new version, we've defined what a nuisance is in terms of glare and also light trespass beyond the property line. We've expanded the exemptions to cover things like special events. You know, you have a festival or something like that. And so and then there is a nod to the fact that sports lighting can be very bright and very intrusive. And so we've only suggested, but not mandated, that sports lighting be guided by what are considered the recommended practices of the Illuminating Engineering Society, which is the standard-setting body for lighting for the United States. Next frame. In terms of the homeowner, some things have remained the same. We're keeping the same thresholds for shielding as we had 25 years ago. Although initially we considered limiting the total amount of light that would be allowed on a homeowner's property, we decided to remove that, but we have included what are called preference standards. So the bylaw will say there's no standard, but the town would prefer that you do this. And that's both for the amount of light and something called color temperature, which might be new to you. It is essentially the hue that a light has. The higher that temperature, measured in the Kelvin scale, the bluer that light will be. And so there's been a gradual movement throughout the industry, throughout best practices, to move to lower and lower color temperatures. That means they are warmer hue, less blue. All of that is quite good. And again, although we, for the homeowners, we don't have a standard, but we recommend a certain maximum color temperature. And then finally, something is new that is not a tremendous problem here, but could be and has been in other communities, what we would call accent lighting, landscape lighting, string lights, lighting the sides of your buildings. There's something in there to sort of encourage people to make sure it's pointed in the right direction, not over the next neighbor's property, and to institute a curfew from 12 to 6, so that if you've got lights if you're lighting up all your landscaping at home, that would be off after midnight. Okay, and then the next, I think, for the final one, turning to municipal properties, there's a little more rigor here. We've instituted some limits on, you can see that the shielding requirements are the same, but we've also limited the number of, the intensity, maximum intensity of any given light of 5,000 lumens. Lumens is the measurement of how much light is generated. By comparison, a typical residential street light here in town is about 2,500 lumens. So we're asking businesses to limit any light that they install below 20 feet near the ground to no more than 5,000. If they want more than that, and you can imagine situations like that, for example, the parking lot of a Walmart or CVS or something like that, where you have really tall poles, then those installations have to be following the practices of the IES. And again, there's that nuisance standard. So the final part of this is it will remain a complaint-driven bylaw. And in discussions with Paul about this, this falls to the lighting commissioner. I'm sorry, the building commissioner. And typically what has happened in the past, if there's a complaint, somebody's objecting to a neighbor's light, it's not the building commissioner who goes out first, but usually a police officer to kind of judge the situation, and the building commissioner gets involved later. It's also the case that the planning board has been tremendously supportive in making sure that new developments that come in follow the guidelines and have lighting plans that make sense for our communities. And you can see that some of the newer businesses that have come into town have really good quality lights. I would point to as my best example, the lighting that went into Chelmsford Plaza some years ago by Winstanley Properties. That is really beautiful, high-quality lighting, and the color temperature of those lights is 2700. But to try to have a better pathway for enforcement, the bylaw introduces the notion of a lighting standards officer. This is not a new hire. There's no cost. It is essentially the building commissioner or somebody that the building commissioner appoints to do that. In some cases, when it's felt that the building commissioner or whoever is working in that department is out of their league in terms of the technical specifications, they have the ability to call upon a professional lighting professional to make those measurements. And in the cases of the commercial properties, that the cost for that would be borne by the petitioner. So if you're you have a new development or something like that, you have to bring a third party to certify compliance. That would be borne by the petitioner, not by the town. I think that is about it. The planning board has supported this, and I have reached out to virtually every conceivable stakeholder in town, the police and fire departments, the Chelmsford Business Association multiple times, the Conservation Commission, the Environmental Sustainability Committee, the Historic District Commission, and so forth. Even the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee got an earful from me. So I've tried to work with all of these stakeholders to make sure that this is fair and reasonable. What I hope is that this beautiful town that we have can remain that and actually improve upon it by asserting a little bit more control over the lighting we have. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I welcome any questions you might have.
Considering putting in what I would call motion detector lights, so I would want them to be for the time second that I'm walking into my house, that I see everything around. Don't have to worry about people's. So what is the feeling about that? Because that would be bright on purpose.
Right. So
short term.
That's right. The notion is that if you have lighting that is on motion sensor,
Yeah.
that it can exceed the limits that we have set. Remember, in the initial going, we were going to limit the total brightness of all the lights on your property. That's no longer going to be the case in the bylaw. What I would suggest to you is that you're welcome to light up your property, but you don't really have the right to light up your neighbor's property. And so from the standpoint of your being able to see best in your environment, those lights really should be pointed down so that you're not overwhelmed by the glare of them as you're trying to enter your house.
I don't mean to be, I understand light pollution. My husband and I, years ago, we went up to Vermont for a romantic weekend, and we were like, oh, it's so dark in the room. Let's open up the window to get a little light in here. We put the shade, went, you heard the noise, and because it was Vermont, there was no light.
Well, that's great for Vermont.
That's Vermont, but I'm saying is that it's...
So let me try to explain the glare situation for you. Your eyes can see very well at night as long as there is not a glare source within your field of view, especially if you're a senior. The older you get, the more susceptible you are to glare. Yes, you need light to see where you're going, but as soon as you put a glare source in your field of view, then your pupils contract and your eyes actually can see less well than they can otherwise. And my classic example is you've probably driven down a street with a car coming at you with
the high beams.
With high beams. Not only are they high beams, but they're very blue rich. Your eyes are exquisitely sensitive to blue light at night. That only makes the problem worse. So if someone has a security light, getting back to your situation, that's fine. But I would submit to you that you will actually see better in your surroundings if you're not looking at the bulbs when those lights go off. Let the bulbs illuminate the area that you want to illuminate, but not your eyes.
I have a split, so I don't know how that would work. So geographically, that's the only incident that I would need to have. And also, the other question I had was solar lamps, like I have on the walkway.
Those would count as landscape lighting, and are they on all night?
It depends on how sunny it was that day.
I mean, that's not, I'm not, the intent of this bylaw is not to go after people's porch lights and their their walkway lights, to be
Yeah, no,
honest.
But those lights, but you do have a requirement that you can't have them on after so many hours in here, correct?
Right. Landscape lighting would be,
So your porch lights
Yeah, well, how do you enforce that?
with the.
it's not actively enforced. It's a citizen complaint, just like the existing bylaw is. No one's going to go around at night and be the lighting police, if that's the question.
But you can't have it.
My question
Neighbor
is,
is.
Your
what's
neighbor
the
is.
point? If-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 I don't get it. What's the point then? If people can do whatever they want, then why bother?
There are many bylaws here in town that are complaint-driven. And this is just one of them. A noise, if it's a noise pollution bylaw, for example, by comparison. People can't do whatever they want if it becomes an annoyance or a nuisance to your neighbor or to the rest of your neighborhood. So the trigger for compliance is that you would contact the building commissioner's office and say, my neighbor has a light that is causing me to lose sleep at night. Come and check it out, please.
But you can do that today, correct?
And that's exactly what you can do today. It's no different than the existing bylaw. in
Just
that
giving
respect.
numbers?
Well, can I just take it a step further, and then the commissioner comes out and tells you gotta do something, or else what?
In the bylaw that's been distributed, there would be, which the original one didn't have, there would be a sequence of fines that would be triggered after a certain period of noncompliance. Remember that you have 10 years to comply with this bylaw. It's not like the moment that it's signed, everyone has to go running out and change their lights. The sort of, the carrot and stick aspect of it is that over time, people who are otherwise going to replace their lights anyway would replace them with lights that are conforming.
I get that.
So how do you envision education for the public here in Chelmsford? Would it be a series of pamphlets, leaflets, a mailing? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's one that actually harkens back to the original bylaw because it had the same sort of situation. I guess if I were, I think a good first line of defense, not defense, but a first line of an education would be for the building commissioner to alert lighting, electrical contractors in town that this bylaw is in place, and these are, in the bylaw that's there, it shows conforming and non-conforming fixtures as a guideline. In many cases, these are, if that electrical contractor is actually keeping up with best practices, they probably know this already. But the reality is that if I am a homeowner and I want to put up a security light outside my second floor, I hire a lighting contractor. There's no permit required. It kind of flies under the radar of all of this until it's installed and turned on. So my hope is that, yes, that there would be some, we could use cable television. We don't have a newspaper anymore. We'd have I can imagine something on the building commissioner's, the building department's website to inform people about this. One of the things that Paul and I discussed was the notion that with this suddenly coming to front and center on the stage, that suddenly a whole bunch of people will contact the building commissioner and say, hey, yeah, my neighbor has a really bad light, come and do something about it. And that is conceivable. But the reality is that there's been 25 years of I won't say lax enforcement because there really is no enforcement. Again, it's complaint driven. But things have gotten bad, and I'm hoping to sort of turn it around and ultimately make things better.
So if there is a rush on people reporting because there's this new bylaw that's put into place, how do you envision enforcement being done? A lot of complaints could be glare and edge of property,
Right.
and typically, yeah, you can check lumens and tell and temperature with a gauge,
Right.
but you can't check where it's landing and whether or not it's affecting another property.
Actually, you can. If I stand, if
During
I
the middle
take
of the
this,
day?
This is a light meter which, at a professional grade, costs about $200 or $300. I'd be happy to lend it to the building commissioner. I stand at the edge of the property, I press one button, I get a reading, it's either in compliance or it isn't.
So it's going to be able to, in the middle of the day, it's going to be able to read.
No, not in the middle
So
of
that's
the day.
that's what I'm saying. So I envision there'll have to be some sort of person going out at night to confirm that this
Yes.
light's hitting.
Again, the sequence of enforcement would be somebody files a complaint, likely someone who's already, public safety who's already out at night makes a sort of crude ascertainment, boy, this is obnoxious, no, there's no problem here. Reports that to the building commissioner. How and when the building commissioner or someone who that is appointed to do that then goes out and makes an actual measurement is a detail that I didn't feel was, it was kind of down in the weeds for the bylaw.
I get that, but that there is a cost to them. There is an increased cost that's going to be borne by the town, both for compliance and for checking in on those certain things. Not only by a police officer having to make an extra call, but having a enforcement officer go out, and if the enforcement officer has to go out at night in order to check those boundary issues, you're going to have to pay overtime. There's no person that's on in and there that can handle that.
I don't disagree with that, but the existing bylaw has that too.
And it's, okay, so then it goes back to David's comment, then why are we changing it, I guess, is the
Because
question.
the existing bylaw had no standard. It was basically a judgment call on the part of whoever is investigating that, yeah, this is really annoying, you have to change it or not. But it was a completely subjective assessment.
Okay. How many other towns are doing something like this?
What is something like this?
A update to this degree of the lighting bylaw?
Particularly for residential.
So we've had this discussion before. The number of changes for residential are very few. There's no limit on how many lights a residence can have. There's no limit on how bright those can be. As was the case before, if they exceed a certain lumen limit, they have to be shielded.
There is a limit on whether or not I can keep my porch light on all night, right?
No, because that's a security light. That's not an accent light by this definition.
So
It's
if
the
I want to
accent.
have my accent lights to my walkway that are on.
I think a reasonable person, Anita, would consider those security lights so you can find your way safely
Even-
home. If you're lighting the side of your house, if you're lighting your trees up, you know, if you've got, and one of the things that has become a problem in a lot of other communities, you've probably seen them, are these string lights that are kind of party lights. That, again, it's not a problem we have here, but in many towns there are. They are left on all night by neighbors, and the neighbors, the people next door, I'm sure, are not appreciative of that. They serve no.
I like those if my neighbor leaves them on.
Well, then you wouldn't file a complaint. But somebody else might. You know, I'm sorry, just to make a comparison. If this were noise, if this were water from your sprinkler system going onto your neighbor's property, if this were smoke from a fire that you've built to burn your brush, which you're allowed to do, but you can't let the smoke drift into somebody else's yard, those are all comparable situations. You have the right to light your property. You don't have the right to light your neighbor's property.
So, just back to my question, I'm sorry if I missed the answer. What other communities are going through this
Yes,
process?
I'm sorry. This is pretty cutting edge in the sense that, first of all, in the sense it's a general bylaw instead of a zoning bylaw. There are about 60 towns in Massachusetts that have some form of outdoor lighting ordinance. I deal with a lot of these people. There's an organization called Dark Sky International. There's a Massachusetts chapter. I'm one of the officers for that. And I get calls. I had a call just today from somebody in Belmont, which does not have an outdoor lighting ordinance. My neighbor's light is just obnoxious to me. What can I do? I get this all the time. So that was where I got the idea to switch from a zoning bylaw to a general bylaw. not only to sort of encourage conformance from all lighting, but also to capture the municipal side, the utility side, that have otherwise been more or less exempt from that. So I would agree that this is forward-looking, and one of the things that came up in the discussions with the planning board is that, it's been 25 years since we updated this. We should have done this at some point in the past, more recently. And there's a sort of general agreement that we would take a look at this like every 5 years to see what tweaks need to be made and see where things are going. This whole notion of color temperature, for example, wouldn't have been part of a bylaw that was put forward even 5 years ago. But that's what the lighting science is, that's where best practice is going.
Okay. Just in some of the parts of I have a few questions.
Sure.
You have string lighting here as the last definition before there are examples of acceptable and unacceptable lighting fixtures. There's no mention of anything regarding holiday lighting at all, and I'm wondering if we're capturing holiday lighting in the definition of a string of multiple lights hung between 2 points.
In the original draft of this, there was something about holiday lighting.
Okay.
And trying to define a period of time before and after which it was acceptable to have them up. A couple of things have happened. First of all, there are all manner of holidays for all kinds of organized groups, religions, whatever it might be. And so, Halloween's big these days. And so, is that a holiday? Yes, I think so. The other thing was that, I have tried to be very sensitive to community input, and over the last Christmas period, there was a real flame war on Chelmsford News, the Facebook page, about somebody who made a suggestion about, gee, maybe you should turn off your Christmas lights after a certain hour, and it was not pretty. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it best with the planning board's agreement that maybe we should just leave the holiday lighting out.
Okay, so holiday lighting is not covered by the string of
no.
multiple lightings. Would it then make sense to, if we're addressing all lighting here, have some section that says holiday lighting is exempt?
No, well, I think what he just said is, everybody got a holiday, and it's all
Oh,
over
I
the
understand
time.
that. And he's saying the holiday lighting is exempt, but I read this to say, okay, lighting, here's string lighting, that seems to be.
And the holiday lighting section had been under the outdoor accent lighting set.
So
Okay.
are you just doing a flat midnight to 6, have it off?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that for no matter what your holiday lighting is, I think most people would find that that's not unreasonable.
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying there's no mention at all, and I'm concerned that people are going to look at the string lighting and be calling in complaints about string lighting before holiday lighting.
String lighting is defined?
It is, but holiday lighting is not at all. It's not included. I understand what you're saying. It's not included. But when I look at a bylaw, when I look at a regulation, when I look at a ruling, when I'm trying to give a argument on something, I look to see what's there and what isn't. And holiday lighting isn't mentioned at all, but string lighting is. And the string lighting says a string of multiple lights hung between 2 points, often used to decorate outdoor spaces.
A reasonable person could reasonably conclude that that includes holiday lighting.
Exactly.
That's your point.
Yeah, that is my point. Yeah. And so I'm concerned that you're going to have a bunch of people calling saying, "Hey, I've got neighbor using holiday lights, and they've got way more than they're supposed to than the two." Because if you look, just at the Govee, for instance, the Govee lights, a 100-foot string of Govee lights, it's 40 lumens per light. There's 73 lights on it. That's going to be 2,800 lumens. That's going to exceed that definition in this, and that would be holiday lighting. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just concerned that it's not mentioned here, and you're going to have a whole bunch of complaints coming in because of that.
So then by making a specific exemption for holiday lighting, what precludes anyone from saying, well, these are up because they're holiday lighting?
Yeah, that was exactly my point.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
But it
All
at
year
least
long.
it addresses the complaints that would come in because it isn't addressed.
I hear what you're saying. If the bylaw were to enumerate everything that isn't covered by the bylaw, it would be a lot longer than it is now. That's just one thing. I mean, I can think of all kinds of other kinds of lighting. You mentioned, lighting along your walkway. Some people would consider that accent lighting. I would consider that security lighting because I want to be able to walk safely to my home. But if I've got lighting pointing up at my trees, I think that's a clearer definition. I appreciate it, and if I were starting this process over again, that might be something. But again, I think that's opening a door to everybody calling what they've got holiday lighting and therefore getting away with it.
That's possible.
Would since this is, not to say this is your big idea, but it is obviously something very near and dear to your heart, I know that even though I saw the pictures of the lights, like, this is okay, this is not okay, there's drawings, people really need just like, would you make a thing for Chelmsford Telemedia saying, this is fine, this is not fine?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, that is one of the best ways we have these days in the town to get the word out, and I think that's an excellent idea.
Because I'm a little confused what would and would not be, and
Well,
I'm thinking about lights in my house, and are they bright enough? Would they pass?
the point was raised about what can you during the daytime. I can look at, and the building commissioner, it wouldn't take long to show the way here. I can look at a light and say, that's not going to conform even before you turn it on. It's very common with businesses, for example, to have a light that's on the side of the building that shines directly out into the parking lot to try to illuminate the whole parking lot from the side of the building. That's not going to conform. I can tell you that's not going to conform just by looking at it during the daytime. And so there are businesses that do a very nice job with lighting their parking lots, and there are many that do not. And as I mentioned, I've had multiple conversations with the Chelmsford Business Association. They're on board with this. They support this. I'm not sure they're going to stand up at town meeting and say we support it, but they understand, and I want to work with them as well.
Sure, okay. Just continuing on through the
Sure.
Through the actual bylaw itself. For new lighting, it says all outdoor luminaires installed in the town of Chelmsford after the effective date of this bylaw shall comply with the requirements established by this bylaw. And this does apply to residential, because it applies to, so is there an exemption for historical lighting? So historical fixtures?
That would fall under facade lighting. But you mean historical design?
Historical design, yep.
As long as it's not more than 1,000 watts, 1,000 lumens, it's fine.
So the burden will be on the resident that has lighting to determine what their lumen
You
output
make
is?
those decisions every time you buy a light. I mean, every lighting package that you buy tells you how many lumens it takes, how many watts it takes, what its color temperature is. And so, yes, it's true, but these are kind of the same decisions that you make every day when you buy a light. You decide that you want a warm white versus a cool white versus a daylight when you go to go to the store. And so I'm not sure, what I'm asking the businesses and residences in the town to do is, from the point that this goes forward, when you buy a light, buy one that conforms.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what if someone has a set of lights? They have multiple lights of the same fixture. One is damaged. It said it has to be brought into conforming. So you're saying that in order to do that, they'd either have to replace just that one or replace all of their lighting in order to, if one part of a set is damaged? We're talking fixtures again.
So are we security fixtures, for example, or I mean, what do you?
Any fixture that would be in excess of the 1,000 lumens they're in within.
Right. I mean, there's the only fixture of that type that I can think of is like a 3-lamp security light, of which you can go down to Home Depot. Are you thinking of something other than that?
No, I'm thinking of wall sconces and things like that go for anywhere from 400 to 1,200 lumens.
A wall sconce can be shielded.
I'm saying a lot of people have unshielded wall sconces. And so if one is damaged, you're saying that now has to come in compliance.
If you're just replacing a bulb, you just replace the bulb.
No, I'm talking about glass on a wall sconce. It gets damaged, you have to replace that but it was only one of a set.
I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
I would humbly submit that you're drilling down into this deeper than you need to, because I'm asking the people of Chelmsford, the businesses of Chelmsford, to try to do the right thing when they're installing new light. Am I going to tell them, am I going to require them to install it when they put it in? No. I'm not asking the building commissioner to go out and check every light that's installed on every building. But what I am saying is that your 1,200 lumen wall sconce might trigger a nuisance complaint from your neighbor, and then enforcement would ensue.
Agreed.
Going to 4.6 with the height requirement.
Yes.
Let's bring it up here.
That's in the existing bylaw. Two.
The 35, not shall not exceed 25, maximum linear height of 35 is allowed per permit. So the 25 is currently in the existing? Okay. I was just concerned about whether or not we'd have an issue of compliance where there's no grandfathering of any of this, and someone has already installed something that's going to be out of compliance.
Well, what's new is that, this applies to businesses, if you have, I was imagining, what's the highest that you can install a light on a two-story building? And it's 20 feet, and that's why there's 20 feet in there. If you want it to be higher than 20 feet, you can do that, but then it kicks over to the IES specifications. This is commonly what the planning board would do if you have a developer who comes in and wants to do area lighting in a parking lot, for example. There are very detailed specifications for how many lights, how far apart they have to be, how bright they are on the ground, those sorts of things. And those are not required by this. They are guidelines.
So I'm wondering what happens. You have a neighbor doing the best he can. He installs these really nice lights. He thinks he's compliant. It's summertime. The trees are full. You know, he's checking. There's no shadow. The trees, the leaves fall off the trees. Lots of shadow. So I'm wondering, what would happen there?
Well, it would depend on the kind of light it is. If it's over 1,000 lumens for a single light, or if it's over 2,000 lumens for like a two-headed security light, that's in the bylaw now.
So, but you were talking about trespassing, like you don't want to light up.
That's in the bylaw now. If somebody had a complaint, it would be because that light is going over the property into my property or into my bedroom window.
Well, in my example, and maybe I am getting too far down into the weeds or the leaves, in this case.
The leaves.
But for only half the year, right? So then, the leaves come back.
It's really up to you as the neighbor whether you find it offensive or not.
Yeah. Well,
then arguably the person who installed the light, I would like to think that they install lights that are conforming. If they don't, no one's going. There's no repercussion unless and until somebody files a complaint about that, a nuisance complaint. So if you and your neighbor are cool with that because you like it, you like your backyard lit too, great.
For example, like I just got my siding done last year, put all new siding, new lights on my house. I wanted a light on the second floor that overlooks the walkway when you walk in. I'm on a dead-end street. I know for a fact, and I spent top dollar on this. It's over 5,000 lumens. Now, my neighbor, been living there, known them for 20 years now. Never complain. But if they move out and I get someone else,
they might complain.
they might complain.
And cause a stink, right? Next thing you know, you have the police out there, you have, this
Doesn't
light
comply.
enforcement officer. And
I just need to emphasize that enforcement exists now.
So I think for me.
What is different is that there is some guardrails, there are parameters for how you would apply the enforcement and make it fair, as opposed to just a subjective determination for whoever the police officer happens to be who's out that particular night.
Well, no, because I have a fence that protects my property from the other. It's actually an 8-foot fence, not even 6 foot, and I went 8, so that it doesn't trespass, right? But based off of this bylaw, it's still not conforming, so they could still complain.
They still could
Right?
complain.
That's my whole issue, right? Because it's
Anita,
5,000.
What part of this are you finding, the 5,000 lumens?
Yeah.
You're a resident, you're not, it's gone. That was in the original draft, it's not there now. That's in the, that's, what, can, for multifamily dwellings, commercial and industrial properties, and municipal properties, the output of any luminaire at a height below 20 feet shall not exceed 5,000 lumens. That's not you.
That's only for commercial, multifamily. Speaking of compliance, so demonstration of compliance, Kelly, 7.2.
Yes.
It states that any cost associated with such proof of compliance will be paid by the owner of said lot or property. And I just want to understand the methodology behind that, because what I'm seeing here is you have someone complaining about their neighbor, and then because your neighbor complained, and there could be any reason your neighbor complained, it may not be because of the light itself. It's because they don't like you. Why is that burden being placed on the person targeted for supposedly breaking the bylaw rather than the person making the complaint?
As this is written, there are only two, if we're talking neighbor to neighbor, there are only two criteria that would trigger a complaint to force compliance.
Okay.
One is that you're leaving your lights on for non-security reasons all night, your accent lighting.
Okay.
And the other is that your security light or whatever light you have is spilling over onto the neighbor's property beyond a limit.
Okay.
And so if the neighbor complains, but you're within compliance with the standards that have been set, the neighbor has no basis for complying. If compliance is required, then yes, because the person with the light is the one who put up the light. And so are you suggesting that because a neighbor filed a complaint, they would have to pay to have their neighbor's offending light replaced?
Costs associated with proof of compliance will be paid by the owner of said lot or property. I'm just trying to understand if you're proving a negative for someone who's made a complaint against you, why are you bearing the cost of doing that?
A lot of that would be in the case of a commercial property.
Okay.
Or property that where you have.
And I understand that to a greater degree,
Right.
where it's a commercial issue. I'm just concerned about the residential complaint. If you have a neighbor, an ordinary neighbor making a complaint, and you're making the person that's had the complaint brought against them pay to prove that they're not
Right.
in compliance,
Right.
that they are in compliance, rather.
And again, in the original draft of this, there were other standards for residential lighting that have been removed.
Okay.
An attempt to defuse just this kind of situation. As it stands now, if I'm complaining about a neighbor's lights, I have two reasons for doing that
Which you just mentioned,
that
yeah.
would stand up. And so both of those, there really is, there's no cost to prove compliance outside of maybe the building inspector or somebody, me, I'll volunteer to come back out with my light meter and say, okay, you're now in compliance, end of story.
Okay, so we're not concerned about there being a charge that's going to be burden of the person, a residential person and their property.
You know, it depends. I'm sorry, I'm not going to, I can imagine somebody who comes in and builds a McMansion, right, and wants everyone to see every aspect of that home. In that case, then bringing those lights into conformance, and again, we have 10 years to do that, but in the case of a nuisance complaint, if you've designed your lights so poorly that you have neighbors complaining, then maybe I'm missing your point.
I'm not, I'm just going to leave that. We're not, I don't think I'm getting, I'm saying that you have a neighbor that's just complaining to complain. And so, and that exists pretty regularly. So that was my concern with that, but I'm going to leave that for now because I don't think we're going to come to any sort of resolution there. Just two other quick ones. On prohibitions, 108-5, I think it goes back to the holiday lighting. It prohibits any outdoor luminaire that dynamically varies its output by intermittently fading, flashing, blinking, or rotating.
Right.
A number of holiday lights do that, and there's no reference to holiday lights in here. I'm just concerned about, again, there being complaints made for something that's not covered by the bylaw.
That was, the planning board supported that a lot. That's a carryover from the existing bylaw.
Okay.
And in fact, I'd like to point out that the original bylaw has a lot about illuminated signs. And when.
That's been taken out with the signs now. I understand that, yeah. And then just one inconsistency I'm slightly concerned about. With 6.6, luminaires used to illuminate athletic fields.
Yes.
It says that to minimize light trespass on adjacent properties, must be turned off within 1 hour after the end of play or by 10 p.m., whichever occurs first. So what happens if the game ends at 9:55? You have to shut it off at 10? I'm just concerned about how people get off the property at that point.
Right. I'll confess that that's an unusual circumstance. It's more about a set of lights on tennis courts that, people play, and then there's no, dog parks or whatever. That there has to be a practical limit. It may be that in the next iteration of this bylaw, that gets changed to midnight. I think that in the case of sports lighting, which is so strong in most cases, I suspect that neighbors would appreciate 10 versus midnight.
Wouldn't it just be solved by taking out whichever occurs first? So the 10 hard or the end of play for an event? And that way you don't have that.
I'm sorry, within 1 hour after the end of the play, or 10 p.m., whichever occurs. I'm not sure I'm following you.
If you took out whichever occurs first, it would be within 1 hour end of play or 10 p.m. So you have a hard cut of 10 p.m. or.
Because a lot of sports lighting is on whether anyone is playing or not.
Well, I understand that. And what I'm saying is, if there's a hard cutoff at 10, everything shuts off unless there's a game being
Yes,
played.
right.
And if you took out whichever occurs first, you take out that issue where you end at 9:50 and you're shutting off the lights and creating a safety issue. So on the games, when you have a game that's played at 9:50, the lights go off later.
By removing that last phrase, mind you, this is, anyway, by removing that last phrase, if my Little League game ends at 7 p.m. and you get rid of whichever occurs first, then I'm allowed to leave those lights on until 10 p.m.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yep.
yep. And if there's a bunch of kids who see a
What's the big
baseball
deal?
field that's empty and they want to do a pickup game of baseball, and why can't they go and play?
But I think practically, most people will, if they're done playing, shut off the lights.
Right.
It's a little bit of self-policing. But I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying, like, if, like,
I'm just concerned about
friends
that
are-
safety, and I know that safety issue's been come up with public lighting in places as well, are we making sure we're leaving time for people to get to their vehicles, leave time for people to wrap things up so we aren't creating a safety hazard? That's just my concern with the way.
I mean, the spirit of that phrasing was to not have lights left on long after the game ended. Little League games don't ordinarily go on until 10 p.m., although
They
I
can.
haven't played Little League in a long time. And so I wouldn't want the lights left on just because somebody forgot to turn them off.
We're not going to agree on this, but okay, I understand, yeah.
Yeah, I think the chair's just trying to
There's
be
a cost
pragmatic
to
here.
leave the
Like,
lights on,
I
too.
totally agree with a lot of us. I live right across the street from Lockheed. I wake up in the middle of the night, it's light as day in my room because it is so bright, and it disrupts my sleep. I don't like it. I get it. But I think what we're trying to get here is just trying to be pragmatic.
Right.
There's certain things that I think people can get around here if we flex a little bit and simplify a little bit. That's sort of the sense that I'm getting here.
You know, the thing is, it's been submitted. If you think we should introduce an amendment or two on the floor, I'd entertain that. I think that you're creating more problems than you are solving in this particular case by removing whichever occurs first.
But we're also giving you a nice dry run for town meeting.
Sure, of course.
You've been there,
I-
you've taped it.
Yes,
So there's going to be even more questions. We're just trying to be representative of.
right, I appreciate that.
You
I
know.
do.
Any other questions?
Yes, Kelly, you indicated you got support from the planning board. Was there an actual vote taken?
Yes, there was.
And what was the result of the vote?
Last night, the vote was 6-1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And why did the one say no? What did he say?
You can ask her.
Okay, who's,
I'm right here.
okay, well, but you already explained, so that's good.
I am fully supportive of this for commercial properties, commercial retail absolutely. I think it's a great bylaw. I think it's a little overkill for residentials, for residential properties. I think it could be a lot simpler and a lot less technical. As a businesswoman, an executive, as a Generation Xer, stuck between two, taking care of my parents and dealing with my kids, I don't need more stuff on my plate. Like, this is a lot to put on someone to, next time I go buy a light, I have to be an expert and I've got to read through this. So, I mean, I just think from like bandwidth, we are so bombarded, we have so much stuff on our plate that I just don't think it's right to do this to residents, quite frankly. And I think it's, even on the municipal aspect of it, I think it's a little, like, I know my kids are like, oh, is there any basketball courts open at night? Me and my friends could go down and play basketball. Well, if the lights are gonna go off, they're not gonna go play. So that's just, again, 100% for this for commercial. I think it's fantastic. I think he did a fantastic job on the commercial side. And it's easy, and some of our developers have said it, like, if you handed this would be perfect. We have everything there.
Developers like to have guidelines, and,
Yes,
I appreciate
they,
that.
And they're
yeah.
the experts on it. They know this stuff, and they know it inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with this type of technical stuff for lights for my home, and I don't want to.
I always cringe with things that don't include grandfather clauses as well. So that always.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate the effort behind it. Thank you for answering the questions. Do you have any other questions?
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much
All
for your
right.
time.
Thank you.
And your input and your careful reading. You're right. These are the kinds of questions I would anticipate. My first line of defense is, remember, most of this was covered in the original bylaw that you've been living with and ignoring for 25 years.
So then are you saying this will be a tougher one, which we now can ignore?
No, it's one with actual standards that you can't ignore.
I still don't think, I understand it conceptually. I understand the reasons why, but it isn't a zero-sum job. I mean, I don't think it's going to, you have to hire somebody for full-time or anything, but it will be impacting,
There's going to be a financial impact here.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just bringing this to the public's attention is going to invite, I believe, all kinds of complaints. Geez, I've been living with that light. I didn't know I could do anything about it. People are not moving into any town and reading bylaws. When you get your, welcome to Chelmsford packet, is there a bunch of bylaws in there? I mean, probably not. You get coupons to Fishbones and nail salon. I mean, so I don't think this is something that people will know how to pay attention to. And then for those that are sticky, like Jim was mentioning, I can finally get back to my neighbor, back at my neighbor kind of thing.
That's
And I
my
think we're
concern.
going to see a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of potentially gross inefficiencies, sending people all around, and our first responders, our policemen and women, will now need to be involved, and I think that might be a tall order.
And also trying to, like, education of, when you buy a light fixture, this is what you need. That's a pretty tall, I mean, you did include pictures, but most people will be going, is this good or not good? And so I think there's a lot more education that would have to be done to the public, like, don't be a jerk to your neighbors, this is what you should get, because there is a law already there's already by law that if your light's trespassing and causing them not to enjoy their house, you could have a problem. I don't know if we necessarily get to go this precise.
I
agree. And I honestly, buying porch lights and lights by my garage, I've never really read the back of that light. As long as it looks good and lights, you know what I mean? I've never paid attention to the number of lumens. I've never, the color maybe, but I mean, as long as the guy from Home Depot says, yeah, you're gonna be able to cover your driveway, I'm good. So, but I wouldn't know what that means now in relation to this rule set, this proposal.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Now, discussions?
No, not tonight.
Okay.
All right.
You can pull up the schedule.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Got a couple of things I'd like to slot in.
Yep, hold on.
Come on.
Give me a second. All right. So next on agenda is a discussion budget hearing and Springtown meeting warrant article schedule. Let me bring up the schedule.
Any what?
Here we go. Okay, this is updated as of,
Getting used to it.
this is updated as of today. So everything in
Okay.
yellow is going to go gray. And then next week, we'll have the Board of Health. We'll have Community Preservation Fund. Linda Prescott will be here. Discuss the fund itself, and then I think there's one article associated with it.
Yeah, the burying of the
Yes, the burying of the lines,
Utility, yeah,
utilities, yes.
utility lines.
We'll have Deb Siriani here for the Senior Center and Council on Aging next week. Christine will be here for the DPW Waste Sewer Storm and Public Facilities. Chief Ryan will be here for the Fire Department. And then we'll also have, for articles, we'll have the purchase of 10-wheel dump truck with the DPW. And again, there is suppression of the utility lines. Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, sure.
And then the following week, we have currently slated, Chief Spence will be here for the Police Department. And Jay Lang will be here, Dr. Lang will be here for the Chelmsford Schools.
Going to be a full meeting, yeah.
Can you add the MBTA and floodplain for next week, 320?
For next week, 3:20?
Yeah.
What about the drive-through?
That's Paul, right? That's being presented by the town manager.
Well, I imagine if it's being presented by the town manager, will the planning board be discussing that and have a determination by next week?
Did we vote on it?
Oh, did you vote on it already?
Yeah, you did vote on it.
You did?
We did vote on it? I don't
Voted on
remember. Did
approval?
we vote?
It was 5-0 with 2 abstentions.
Oh.
And Chris were the abstentions.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's right, I abstained.
So I'm going to add that
We
to
didn't have to vote
320.
against you, that's why.
32025.
But you're presenting that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Paul, if you could just do a little bit more in depth, and we'll have a planning board, well, Chris will be here next week.
Chris will be here next week.
Okay, just for any input on that. I've reached out to Mary Donovan, I haven't heard back from her yet. We still have available next week and the week after to do that, but I do want to, on the 27th, really focus on getting our votes and recommendations done, so that we're done in March.
Awesome.
I think we'll be
which-
in good shape.
which I think we'll be in good shape, yeah. I think the Chelmsford schools will typically last about a half an hour, maybe a little longer.
He was pretty,
Yeah, well, I
Move
can,
pretty
we
quickly.
can drop them a note and
Yeah.
say, Reader's Digest version.
Yep. And then I think Chief Spence's presentation will be about 20 minutes or so, based upon
agree.
Okay.
our discussion on that. So before 7:30, probably 7:20, 7:15, we'll be in our recommendations at that point,
But
unless Mary comes in on the 27th.
can make sure that it just, that she's like within the 20 minutes that most other people do their presentations within. Can we limit presentation time? Is that a done thing?
We don't limit presentation time,
Okay.
typically, because we want to get as much information and much questions answered as we possibly can. This is our time to do it before we make our recommendations.
Has she changed any of her, as far as, she's not giving you anything new from what she's done before?
I haven't, I reached out to her, I have not heard back from her, I have not connected with her, so
Okay.
I don't,
There's no new information,
There's-
as you know?
I have no current new information from Mary.
Okay.
So I don't know. I've left her a message. She doesn't have email. So I will call her again,
Okay.
either end of this week or beginning of next week, and see if she's available. But I will hold open a spot for her to present. But I do not know if there's any new information or not.
Okay.
So that covers that, and then after that, we'll produce the book and any our comments. We'll get those out. The Wednesday before will be the informational session. Is that going to be at the senior center, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then town meeting starts on the last Monday in April.
And how many,
How many nights?
yeah,
3?
No.
Is my guess. Yeah. Well, I think it'll be 3, but one of the nights will be cut a little earlier, I think. We'll get to a point where someone will say, I move to adjourn because we're not going to get to that article in time, type of thing, I think. But there are, I think, 12 or 12 on the consent agenda? Yeah. So that will take out a good portion of the 32. We're 31 now. I think we went down 1.
and as a town meeting rep years ago, and I don't do it anymore, that's why John said I could come here and do this instead. Still go to town meeting. Is it presented in the order they happen to come, be done, or can we do the tough ones first?
So typically with something, I think I get what you're saying, Elaine. The consent agenda takes a bunch out of order.
Yep,
So that consent agenda comes up when we reach that first one that's going to be part of the consent agenda.
yep.
The first hour or so on the first night's usually presentations, half an hour, maybe an hour, depending on how many presentations we have. Then we do the couple of articles, presentations, when we do that. If there's a particular article where there may be more discussion, there can be a vote to take it out of order or to have it start on a different night. That's happened in the past where there's been one we know there's going to be a lot of discussion on and going to be a lot of presentation on. Sometimes that one starts the next session. And it's done with a vote to take it out of order. So that's possible. Doesn't always happen, but that's definitely a mechanism to address things like that. So you're not starting a really, in the converse
Contentious
situation.
article at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
You're not,
Right,
yeah.
and everybody's-
Typically, in that instance, either you're taking something out of order or you're convening for the night till the next session.
Right. Are there many articles that are not consenty, but not big?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of articles that are yearly articles that maybe not part of the consent agenda for one reason or the other, but usually pass with little fanfare.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. All right.
Long nights.
Yeah. All right. I don't think we have any public comment. Oh, look at that. Right on the button. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See everybody next week.